You should feel proud, and also a bit guilty, because you motivated Magnus Carlsen to use this obnoxious gambit and destroy other grandmasters in about 10 moves. So here's the story. We're talking about the main line of the Sicilian Defense. And from hundreds of millions of games that reached this position, White tried out a lot of different things. But one of the worst moves that you can think of is this move pawn to b4, which looks like an obscure blunder, because Black can take this pawn in two different ways, and it seemed to make no sense for White to give up the pawn at all. Nevertheless, back in 2012, I recorded a 3-part video series covering this opening and showing how White actually has a lot of interesting aggressive ideas. The videos got decent views, you guys picked it up and started to terrorize innocent chess players. And then later, grandmasters picked up the line, including none other than Magnus Carlsen. And today I'll show you 3 examples of how White used this to literally destroy Black. So here the first game, the Black player is Sergei Zhigalko, also a grandmaster and one of the top blitz players in the world. He's playing Black, he captured the pawn, Carlsen goes d4, threatening d5, chasing away this knight. Therefore, Black goes d5, it's their standard reaction, trying to block this push. But after the trade, here's the problem for Black. So far, it looks like Black is just up a pawn. But White goes c4, and Black starts realizing that things are not that simple for them. Because here the queen is attacked. And yes, if Black is familiar with en passant capture, they could take right here. But it doesn't really solve the problem, because in that case, White develops a knight, hits the queen, and Black still faces the same problem. After the queen moves, White is going to keep out this time from c6, and White keeps attacking. Therefore, in this game, instead of capturing on c3, Black played queen e4 check, trying to get the queen out of this danger with a tempo. White goes bishop e3, but now Black is faced again with similar problems. First off, after knight f6, bishop d3 gains one more tempo, hitting the queen. Secondly, after the queen went away, White goes d5, his main threat, kicking away this knight. Now, Black, being a grandmaster, certainly heard the rule, a knight on the rim is deem, but now, unfortunately for him, he's got a wide range of options of how to make his knight deem. He chose to retreat back to b8, perhaps getting ready for the next game. White played h3, kicking this queen out, and the queen actually doesn't have that many squares to go to. Black captured on g2, probably thinking that Carlsen is going to play rook g1, sacrificing some pawns, but it turned out that Carlsen was actually going to sacrifice his opponent's rating. After rook h2, the queen is trapped, and Black just resigned. Second game, World Blitz Championship of 2023. Carlsen's best buddy Hans Niemann is playing here as Black, and he didn't fall for the trap of queen takes g2, blundering the queen. He made an improvement. He played queen to h5. It's quite unfortunate for him that he didn't study games of his homie, because here after knight d2, White develops knight, Black goes g6, probably hoping to continue his development, but after knight f1, a brilliant idea, it turned out that the queen is still trapped, there is no defense against knight g3, and the queen has nowhere to go. It is really absurd that a retreat of the knight to the first rank wins the game and creates the threat that cannot be parried. Now, Black resigned a bit later, but he could have safely resigned right here because there is just no defense against this. And this is probably the most impressive game. Carlsen here is playing White against somebody with the blitz rating of over 2800, quite a strong opponent, and initially we are going into the same variation. After c4, the queen is attacked, but here Black moved it to a5, which is a better try indeed. At least the queen will not be captured. Now, of course, you may be having questions like, what if queen moves elsewhere? We can't analyze it all, but I've got a free masterclass where I share how to find correct moves in any openings. I'll link it down below. You can check it later. For now, let's just stick to the game. d5, the same idea, kicking the knight back. Black goes knight b8. If you ever face this position, you can always suggest that your opponent brings the queen back on the next turn and tries again next time. But here Carlsen just continues his development, bishop d3, Black played bishop g4. There was also one funny trap here that Black could play, so let me show you. If Black plays b3 with this discover check, looks like White should just play bishop d2 and kick the queen out. However, this move bishop d2 would actually be a blunder, because Black's got a brilliant move pawn b2, giving up their queen, but getting a new one on the next turn, and getting White's rook as a free bonus. Back to the game, Black played bishop g4, White just cancelled, knight f6, knight d2, so far both sides just developed their pieces, and now Carlsen goes a3. Kind of saying, hey, your queen is still vulnerable. And it is indeed a pain in the a-file, because whatever Black does is going to be always a threat. Like tried to counterattack with knight to c5, hitting this bishop on d3. And it is also very interesting to see the difference between Carlsen's thinking and thinking of us mortals. Like, when we face such positions, we start thinking, oh, he's attacking us, what to do, do they blunder, like, what's going on here? And I've seen Magnus's live stream here of this game, and he was like, it can be good, black is already behind in development, it's the second move of the same piece in an opening, and it's interesting how his positional understanding allows him to easily evaluate what is going on.
So knight c5, that tickles my Spidey sense. He's just too much time development-wise to be moving his pieces more than once, so I feel like now I should have a huge initiative.
Well, he decided to punish black for this, and he says, alright, I'm gonna create here total Magnus. White is sacrificing the rook, but gets even larger lead in development, plus the central chunk of pawns is something pretty hard for black to deal with, and not easy for them to complete their development.
I've given up a clear exchange, but it's not so obvious how he's going to develop his pieces.
Anyways, black goes e6, threatening this pawn, and here Carlsen plays queen b3. With the dual threat of possibly still trapping this queen after something like bishop a3, and then the queen will be trapped. And the second trap is queen takes b7 with multiple threats from there. Therefore, black decided to retreat the queen back to a6. There was also another pretty interesting moment which didn't happen in the game, but anyway, it's very cool. I'd love to share with you. So here Carlsen said that he was calculating the line bishop takes c5, and he was planning to play queen b5 check with this double attack. Black has to play knight d7 to cover the king and protect the bishop, and then Carlsen was going to play knight e5. But then he realized that it's actually a blunder, because from here, the queen can simply grab the knight, and therefore this variation doesn't work for white. And Carlsen was critical, he thought that he miscalculated. However, what's interesting is that, again, his positional understanding is always right, even if he miscalculates something, which is understandable, it was a blitz game. So here, white would have won the game anyways with the move knight to b3 fork. And from there, white is going to win some material. But the line doesn't stop here, because after queen a6, it is still tricky. White can't just trade queens, because then black ends up with a superior endgame, with extra material. And if white takes here, then black can first trade queens, and only then recapture the knight, again getting material advantage in an endgame. Therefore, white needs to do something different, and that different is a pretty spectacular move. I'll give you a couple seconds, you can try to find it out on your own. It's the move queen takes d7. Sacrificing the queen temporarily, to then regain it back, but along the way white grabs two black's minor pieces and gets material advantage and winning endgame. Back to the game, black retreated the queen back to a6, so that the queen can no longer be captured, and black protects this pawn, so that white cannot take it. Carlsen goes bishop b2, actually renewing the threat to capture the queen, with rook to a1 on the next turn. Black goes bishop takes c5, developing a bishop, and now the queen is free to escape somewhere if white tries to attack it, but Carlsen had something else in mind. He first trades on f6 to destroy the pawn structure, and then goes knight e4 with this double attack. And he was here quite optimistic, thinking that, he's going forward, attacking, about to win the game. But after bishop f3, knight c5, while waiting for black's move, he said, oh, I'm actually blundering the move rook g8. The move that black didn't play, but it was indeed a very interesting resource from black. So here the idea is black is giving up the queen in order to create their own attack against the white king. And now the pawn on g2 is pinned, can no longer capture the bishop. And if white is seduced by the queen, then after rook takes g2, black is just winning. This is straightforward checkmate. Now, of course, Carlsen would do something different. In this position, he would probably play g3. But again, it's interesting that in this position, white is still having a very strong attack similar to the actual game. And even when Carlsen miscalculates something, his position remains to be good due to his superior positional understanding, and he's still playing right moves. Black, however, missed the opportunity and played queen to b6, offering the exchange of queens, but of course Carlsen wants to attack, he goes queen a4, checking the king. Now the king cannot try to hide there because of this knight fork. Knight d7 would fork the king and queen, therefore instead black has to keep the king on the middle of the board, but now Carlsen can keep attacking. Queen d7 check, the queen is supported, therefore cannot be captured, the queen has to go back. But now pawn takes e6 creates a very simple threat of queen takes f7 checkmate. Black can now recapture, that would allow white to bring the knight into play and win the game easily, right on the next turn. Therefore, black can't go here, let's take it back. Instead, black played obviously a much better move, bishop h5, which first of all gets the bishop out of danger, and secondly, protects the pawn on f7. And even though white has this very strong attack, it's still not easy to win the game, because the f7 pawn is protected, Alright, if white delivers this check, okay, the king can just run away, and then it's unclear how can white proceed. But here Carlsen found a very interesting move. He refused to attack the king and try to checkmate it, but instead he played queen d5, which is a very interesting and somewhat unusual double attack. It attacks this bishop on h5, but also creates this fork threat of knight to d7 check. And black can't stop these both threats. So in order to stop knight d7, black played queen c6, so that this does not count with a fork, but now this bishop drops on h5, and white still threatens checkmate. So after black captures, now white is having a material advantage. He keeps attacking bishop e4, hits the queen needs to guard this pawn, he goes queen e8, offering an exchange of queens, but Carlsen says, nope, I want to keep attacking, queen h6 check, king goes, and now simply knight takes b7. Now, it's also interesting that Carlsen does not always try to find the best move, because it's pretty clear that with such an exposed king, white could have tried to checkmate it one way or the other. However, Carlsen chooses an easy approach. He just picks up the pawn and says, you know what, like, material advantage is good enough, and I'm going to win the game anyway. Black plays rook c8, trying to bring the rook into play, which is a very sensible move, but in this particular case, it actually is a blunder, because after this check, the only thing that black can do is to cover with the queen, but after the trade, it fails to this knight fork, knight to d6, and white ends up with a significant material advantage. White is simply up the bishop in an endgame, and black resigned in a couple of moves. You guys told me that besides opening videos, you also want to get something about the middle game. Check out this video, it's the only middle game guide you'll ever need.